Bishop Gino Jennings has just sent shockwaves through the gospel world with a bold statement about women preachers. And it didn't take long before Juanita Bynum fired back. The clash between two of gospel's most powerful voices is sparking outrage, debate, and fiery conversations online. What exactly did Bishop Jennings say, and why is Juanita Bynum so furious? The answer is far more controversial than anyone expected, and it's dividing fans, leaders, and congregations alike. Stay tuned because the full story will shock you. Bishop Gino Jennings has never been one to shy away from controversy. Known for his fiery sermons and unapologetic stances on church doctrine, he recently made a statement about women preachers that has the gospel world talking. And not in a calm way. The statement didn't just spark conversation. It ignited a full-blown clash with none other than Juanita Bynum, one of gospel's most influential and outspoken voices. This is where it gets interesting. Bishop Jennings' words were bold, direct, and, according to many, shocking. For years, he has challenged conventional thinking in the church, but this particular comment struck a nerve, touching on deep-rooted debates about gender, leadership, and authority in ministry. Fans and critics alike are divided. Some agree with his interpretation, while others feel he crossed a line that should never be crossed in modern gospel ministry. Juanita Bynum's response added fuel to the fire. Her words weren't just disagreement. They were a powerful emotional rebuttal that left many stunned. Social media exploded with clips, debates, and heated commentary from followers, ministers, and everyday gospel fans. The conversation escalated so quickly that it has become impossible to ignore. In this video, we'll break down every detail, what Bishop Jennings said, how Juanita Bynum responded, the reactions from the gospel community, and the broader implications of this clash on the future of women in ministry. You won't believe some of the behind-the-scenes tensions, the historical context that led to this showdown, and the unexpected twists that have fans talking nonstop. So stay tuned because by the end of this video, you'll understand why this is more than just a disagreement. It's a moment in gospel history that could reshape conversations about leadership, authority, and respect in the church. Bishop Gino Jennings has built his reputation on boldness and a strict interpretation of Scripture, and his latest statement about women preachers was no exception. Speaking during a recent sermon that quickly went viral, Jennings asserted that the pastoral role, according to his understanding of the Bible, is reserved exclusively for men. He claimed that while women are called to serve in powerful ways within the church, leading a congregation as a pastor was not biblically sanctioned. The delivery of his statement was firm and unapologetic, leaving no room for misinterpretation. Some of his words were viewed as inflammatory by those who support women in ministry, while others applauded him for staying true to his beliefs despite potential backlash. Within hours of the sermon being posted online, clips began circulating across social media platforms, sparking heated debates. The immediate impact was intense. Fans and critics alike weighed in, some arguing that Jennings' interpretation was outdated, while others praised him for his unwavering adherence to Scripture. The controversy grew because Bishop Jennings has a massive following. His voice carries weight not only in his local congregation, but across the national and international gospel community. Every word he says resonates far beyond the pulpit, and his statement on women preachers quickly became a trending topic in gospel circles. Within the first 24 hours, reactions poured in. Social media timelines were filled with commentary, both supportive and critical. Hashtags emerged, forums debated the theological implications, and even mainstream news outlets picked up the story. The debate became more than a theological discussion. It was a clash of perspectives on authority, gender roles, and the evolving landscape of modern ministry. But here's where the story intensifies. The statement didn't just create chatter among fans. It drew the attention of Juanita Bynum, one of gospel's most outspoken women leaders. Known for her fiery preaching and unapologetic presence in the gospel world, Bynum saw Jennings' comments as a direct challenge to women in ministry. Her response would not be a simple disagreement. It would escalate into one of the most publicized confrontations in gospel leadership in recent memory. And that's what makes this moment so significant. This isn't just a difference of opinion. It's a collision of ideologies, experiences, and leadership styles that forces the gospel world to confront uncomfortable questions. Ministry. How should women be recognized? What is the balance between biblical interpretation and cultural progression? And what does this mean for the future of gospel leadership? The controversy surrounding Bishop Jennings' statement set the stage for what was about to become an even more explosive exchange. The tension was palpable, and the world was watching, waiting for Juanita Bynum's reply, a response that would not only defend women preachers but also challenge the authority and influence of one of the most controversial pastors in America. Juanita Bynum has never been one to stay silent, especially when it comes to defending women in ministry. Within hours of Bishop Gino Jennings' statement going viral, Bynum took to social media and public platforms to deliver a response that was equal parts passionate, pointed, and unyielding. In her statement, she directly challenged Jennings' interpretation, asserting that women are just as called and equipped by God to preach, lead, and shepherd congregations. She emphasized that Scripture, when interpreted holistically, shows countless examples of women serving in leadership roles, guiding communities, and influencing generations. Her words were not only a defense of women preachers, but also a direct call to the gospel community to recognize the evolving roles of women in ministry. Bynum's delivery was commanding. She did not couch her disagreement in subtle language. She spoke with conviction, authority, and undeniable emotion. To her, this was about more than theology, it was personal. Women in ministry, she argued, often face scrutiny, bias, and double standards that men never encounter. Her response highlighted decades of marginalization and the ongoing struggle for recognition, painting Jennings' statement as emblematic of systemic challenges within the church. The fallout was immediate. Clips of Bynum's fiery address were shared, reposted, and discussed across multiple platforms. Comments poured in, ranging from supporters praising her courage to detractors criticizing her for overreacting or challenging a respected pastor. The debate quickly spread beyond social media. Podcasts, gospel radio shows, and even online publications began covering the clash, dissecting every word, tone, and implication. Many gospel leaders weighed in, either publicly siding with Bynum or cautiously analyzing the theological underpinnings of Jennings' claim. Some praised her boldness, noting that her voice is crucial for balancing conversations about authority and gender in the church. Others called for unity, emphasizing that debates like these, while important, can also divide congregations if handled poorly. What made Bynum's response particularly striking was her ability to combine theology, personal experience, and social commentary. She not only referenced biblical passages and historical examples of women in ministry, but also shared insights from her decades-long career, illustrating the real-world impact of limiting women's roles in spiritual leadership. Her words were a reminder that this is not an abstract debate. These conversations affect livelihoods, opportunities, and the spiritual journeys of countless women across the country. The tension between Jennings and Bynum also sparked a larger conversation about the state of modern gospel ministry. Viewers and fans began debating fundamental questions. Should interpretation of Scripture be rigid or flexible in modern contexts? How do churches honor both tradition and inclusivity? And most importantly, how can the gospel community navigate disagreements without devolving into public feuds? As the dialogue intensified, the story took on a life of its own. Social media threads turned into battlegrounds, video comment sections filled with heated arguments, and some congregations reported internal discussions about whether to align with one leader or the other. The impact wasn't just online. The clash was reshaping perceptions, challenging traditions, and forcing leaders to confront difficult truths about authority, gender, and respect within the church. But here's the twist that made this moment unforgettable. Bynum didn't just respond. She issued a challenge of her own. A challenge that directly questioned the broader gospel leadership culture and demanded accountability. And that's where the story takes another dramatic turn, revealing why this debate is far from over. Once the public exchange between Bishop Gino Jennings and Juanita Bynum went viral, the gospel world erupted. Leaders, pastors, and everyday believers quickly weighed in, creating a ripple effect that extended far beyond social media. The clash was no longer just between two high-profile figures. It had become a cultural flashpoint, forcing the gospel community to examine deeply held beliefs, traditions, and the evolving role of women began discussing the controversy in real time. Some congregations posted statements expressing support for Jennings' interpretation, emphasizing the need for adherence to Scripture as they understood it. Others stood firmly behind Bynum, applauding her courage in challenging centuries-old gender norms and advocating for inclusivity in leadership. Prayer lines, Bible study groups, and church boards became arenas for debate, with members passionately defending their stances. Social media amplified the divide. Hashtags supporting both Jennings and Bynum trended on platforms like Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Gospel influencers joined the conversation, posting videos, live streams, and commentary that drew millions of views. Many of these discussions were constructive, exploring scripture, history, and ministry practices in depth. But some conversations devolved into heated arguments, reflecting the strong emotions stirred by the debate. The fallout even reached mainstream media. National news outlets picked up the story, framing it as more than a theological disagreement. It became a story about gender equality, leadership, and cultural evolution in religious communities. Interviews with scholars, pastors, and sociologists highlighted the significance of this clash, noting that while church traditions are centuries old, society's expectations for inclusivity are changing rapidly. This intersection of faith, culture, and leadership made the controversy both timely and widely relevant. But the most impactful reactions came directly from within the gospel music and ministry world. Female pastors and gospel artists shared personal stories about the challenges of leadership in male-dominated spaces. They spoke candidly about the barriers they faced, from being overlooked for promotions and speaking opportunities to confronting subtle biases in how their authority is perceived. Many expressed gratitude for Bynum's bold stance, saying it gave them validation and a platform to amplify their voices. Male pastors and gospel leaders also weighed in. Some supported Jennings, emphasizing the importance of maintaining scriptural interpretations and respecting tradition. Others, however, acknowledged that the conversation was overdue and praised Bynum for prompting the community to examine how gender roles are evolving in ministry. The debate highlighted a generational divide as well, with younger ministers more likely to support inclusive leadership and older leaders often leaning toward traditional interpretations. One of the most striking aspects of the community reaction was how it revealed the undercurrents of tension and change in gospel culture. Congregations that had never questioned leadership norms were now forced to confront difficult questions. Are women preachers truly being given equal opportunity? How do we balance respect for tradition with the call for progress? And, perhaps most importantly, how can ministry thrive when voices on both sides of the debate feel unheard? By this point, the conversation had taken on a life of its own. Followers of both leaders began producing analysis videos, opinion pieces, and podcasts dissecting every word, tone, and historical context behind the statements. What started as a sermon and a response had evolved into a cultural phenomenon, sparking widespread dialogue that extended far beyond the walls of any single church. And yet, even amidst all this debate, there was an underlying tension building, a question that had yet to be answered. Could these two influential leaders find common ground, or was the gospel world destined to watch this conflict escalate further? The answer would shock many and set the stage for the next chapter in this unfolding saga. To fully understand why Bishop Gino Jennings' statement and Juanita Bynum's response caused such a massive stir, we need to step back and look at the historical and theological context that shapes the role of women in ministry. This is not a debate that exists in isolation. It is rooted in centuries of church history, biblical interpretation, and evolving societal norms. Historically, many denominations have restricted leadership roles in ministry to men, often citing passages from the New Testament that discuss pastoral authority and the roles of women in the church. Bishops, pastors, and theologians have long debated the meaning of passages like 1 Timothy 2:12, where Paul writes about women not teaching or having authority over men. For decades, these passages have been central to arguments against women preachers, creating traditions that persist in certain circles to this day. However, these interpretations have never gone unchallenged. From early church history to contemporary movements, women have found ways to exercise spiritual authority, sometimes in secret, sometimes openly, despite systemic barriers. Priscilla and Junia, mentioned in Scripture, demonstrate that women held key roles in the earliest Christian communities. Their contributions challenge a rigid interpretation that limits women from preaching or leading congregations. Fast forward to modern gospel ministry. Women like Juanita Bynum, Yolanda Adams, Tasha Cobbs-Leonard, and others have not only preached to massive congregations, but also led global ministries, founded organizations, and influenced millions. Their success complicates the traditional arguments because the evidence of God using women to lead, teach, and inspire is undeniable. For supporters of women in ministry, these leaders are proof that spiritual gifting is not limited by gender. It is divinely assigned. This tension between historical interpretation and modern practice is precisely what made Bishop Jennings' statement so controversial. By reaffirming a strict, male-only view of pastoral leadership, Jennings tapped into a centuries-old tradition that many believe is outdated. At the same time, he reminded followers of his unwavering commitment to his understanding of Scripture, which some see as integrity and others see as inflexibility. Juanita Bynum's response, therefore, was not just emotional, it was deeply rooted in this historical and theological debate. She pointed out that limiting women based on selective interpretation ignores the broader biblical narrative, the examples of female leaders throughout history, and the transformative work women continue to do in the church today. Her words acted as a counterbalance, urging the community to reconsider long-held assumptions and challenge systemic biases. Adding another layer to this context is the cultural evolution within the Black church. Over the past few decades, conversations about gender, leadership, and representation have intensified. Younger generations of ministers are questioning rigid hierarchies, advocating for inclusivity, and redefining what effective spiritual leadership looks like. The clash between Jennings and Bynum can be seen as a microcosm of this broader generational and cultural tension, a moment where tradition meets the call for progress and the stakes are incredibly high. The theological and historical backdrop explains why the controversy resonated so widely. It's more than just a personal disagreement. It's a reflection of a struggle happening across congregations worldwide. It forces ministers, congregants, and viewers to wrestle with difficult questions. How do we honor Scripture while embracing the undeniable contributions of women in ministry? Can leadership structures adapt without compromising biblical principles? And what does it truly mean to follow God's calling in a modern context?